This is To Help You Heal, and I'm your host, Marie Monville. We are going to spend 10 minutes talking about healing. What kind of healing do you need? Is it in your mindset? Is it emotional healing? Is it spiritual healing? You know, there's a lot of healing that we all need, and this is where you're going to find it every week, 10 minutes on Tuesday. I'm so glad you're spending this time with me. Thanks for joining me on this week's episode of To Help You Heal. We are in week 3 of a 4-part series. We started off week 1 talking about making space for relaxation, and not the I'm going on vacation or I'm going to take a nap kind of relaxation, although those are good, but figuring out how to incorporate moments of relaxation into our day, times where we can drop our shoulders, where we can take a deep breath and just let it all go. Let go of the to-do list, the stress, the worry, the frustrations, all of the things that are constantly in our brains. We did that so that then we would be ready to listen. That's what we focused on in week 2. Last week, we talked about listening to ourselves, hearing God. And I asked you not to do anything except capture those thoughts, because here in week 3, it is all about clarity. Clarity is the next natural step in this process. And then we're going to finish it off next week by deciding what we're going to do with the clarity that we've gotten this week. So, as you move through today's episode and you think about space for relaxation, then using that to create this place where you can listen to yourself, listen to God, get clarity out of it, I don't want you to get the clarity with the idea of doing something with it or implementing it immediately. I just want you to start to think about what clarity means in each one of these places. And we're going to talk about that in this episode. Clarity is about making sense of what we've heard, not perfectly, not feeling this pressure of perfection, of doing something right, but it's just figuring out what is our next step. Because without clarity, we live oftentimes in confusion. We second guess ourselves. We feel stuck and unable to move forward, maybe unable to make a decision. So, clarity helps us identify what we want more of and also what we want less of. Think about those two things. Sometimes it's hard to answer that question, what do I want more of? But in those moments, we probably know what we want less of. So, even as you're starting to think about this, where do you need clarity in your life? I want you to think about the questions. What do you want more of? Or what do you want less of? Or where do you feel like God has been nudging you? Are there places where you've felt this little nudge? Maybe something's coming to mind right now that you haven't done anything with yet. You know, friend, clarity isn't about getting a 10-year action plan. It's just about knowing what to do next. And I think sometimes that's why we end up not doing anything, because we feel like we have to have it all mapped out. We have to see the big picture. We have to know everything that's coming. And I get it. I like control just as much as you do. But all we need and all we oftentimes can control, all God is offering for us to control, is the ability to say yes to Him, to say yes to taking that next step. So, if we want to be in a place where we can get clarity and where we can say yes and move forward, then let's talk for a minute about the things that can be a barrier to clarity. So, overthinking. How many of us have done this? My hand's raised too. We often analyze until we are paralyzed. It's as if we take in too much information or we think about it too many times, too often, for too long. And then we can't make a decision at all because we are so stuck in this place of just the constant swirl of thinking or gathering information, gathering other people's thoughts or resources. And none of those things are bad. I mean, I do love to research. I want to make sure I know exactly what I'm going after or that I've put together a solid thought process. But there's something to be said for doing that too long. Negativity and doubt. You know, sometimes we dismiss our first thought, we dismiss our own voice, and we sideline ourselves by saying those critical things, having those negative thoughts, having that negative self-talk. Also, noise, letting other people's voices override God's or our own. And fear can be such a barrier to clarity, because instead of making a choice out of the good perspective of where we feel like we're being led, these nudges, what we want more of, what we want less of. Sometimes we're making a choice or we're afraid of making a choice that's going to lead us down the wrong path. And so instead of taking just one step, we decide that we're better off not to take any steps. So, if we want to stay out of those places and move towards clarity, what do we need to do? We need to gather what we've heard. So, when we think about last week and the listening exercises, creating that space to really listen to ourselves, I want to ask you, what themes or thoughts kept coming up for you? What kept coming back? Journal them. It doesn't have to be something perfect. You can just sit down and do a brain dump. Write down everything that's in your mind. When you think about the thoughts that came up during those listening times, what were they? Maybe you already curated a list in your phone. Maybe you were taking a walk and doing some notes there. Then let's ask some clarifying questions that are going to help us know what to do with that list. I want you to ask yourself, what feels heavy? What feels like pressure? And what feels life-giving? So, what are the heavy things or the pressure things? What are the life giving things that make you smile? Where do you feel peace versus where do you feel tension? Or what do you feel like God is drawing you towards? When you think about that list and you think about those questions, what are some things that come to mind? I want to remind you, we can trust ourselves. We can trust God. We're just talking about taking one step. Again, we don't have to map it all out and plan the whole road. But it is important to stay out of that place of fear and to also stay out of that place of self criticism, saying, I should have done this before. Why didn't I act on that then? We want to ask ourselves, does this align with scripture and God's character? Sometimes we overthink whether or not this is God. And I always say, I would rather take one step forward, believing that it was God and have Him redirect me, than just continue to sit there asking Him for another confirmation. I believe that God will lead us. And if we get off track, He's going to bring us back on. But if we can say, you know what, this next step, this place where I feel called, it aligns with scripture, it aligns with God's character, then why not take a step forward? So let's think about stepping towards those things that give us more meaningful relationships, more creative energy, more gratitude, more excitement for the life that we live, more peace in our hearts. Let's think about stepping away from those things that we know we want less of, less places of comparison. Maybe for you, one of the things you want to step away from is social media because it gives you this place of comparison or striving. Maybe we want to step away from resentment, feeling resentful that our life is hard or that it doesn't look like somebody else's. Or maybe we need to step away from places of busyness because oftentimes clarity comes as much through the things we take away as the things we add in. So maybe as you read down your list and you were listening to yourself last week, you're thinking, there's a lot of frustration here and I need to get rid of it. And so the clarity that I'm getting now is less of this. What is that thing? Is there one thing that's really at the root of that frustration for you? And then let's stay gentle in the process. This isn't about perfection. We don't have to make tons of progress all at once. It's layered. Clarity comes in layers. Just like we've been layering the weeks, your clarity might come in layers, so don't expect it to show up all at once. Give yourself that space for some trial and error. Think of it as a compass, not a detailed map. It's guiding you. These spaces for relaxation, for listening, for clarity, it's guiding you. You can trust yourself, you can trust God, and you can take that step forward. So, as we close our time together this week, I want to ask you, what repeated themes or nudges have you noticed during the listening? What feels like you need less of right now? What feels like weight to you? And what feels life-giving? Where's the space do you feel God is inviting you into more deeply? Because clarity doesn't come from working harder or pushing through or more work. It comes from slowing down, from listening, from trusting that God's going to highlight the next step, that He loves you enough to make sure you see it and you step forward with Him. Practice noticing. What a thought, right? We need to practice noticing, practice that awareness of where we feel called to step forward. Write it down, stay open. And then next week, we're going to take this clarity and talk about how to create something from it. I hope that you have enjoyed this episode. I hope that you're loving this series. I know I am. Come on over to social media. I'd love to hear from you, hear your feedback on it, and your thoughts on future episodes of To Help You Heal. You can find me online at Marie Monville. You can always email me, marie@mariemonville.com. Come on back next week as we finish this series.